Have you ever been in a situation where you want the same exact card that one of your hobby friends wants? I'm sure we all have to some degree, but in many cases, it might be something that's fairly common. Maybe it's a Luka Doncic card. Maybe it's a Michael Jordan card. Maybe it's a LeBron card or whatever, Mickey Mantle card. But what if it's a card that is scarce enough to where it does not come up very often and you're both hunting around for that card, kind of grail hunting? Well, recently this happened to me with my good friend, Neo. Frank, roll the tape.
Things that have popped out to me so far, there's definitely some non-sports stuff that has caught my eye. A couple larger items. There's a James Earl Jones auto, which is something that's kind of on my list. There's a few of the 77 Luke Skywalker autographed by Mark Hamill. There's a Robert Downey Jr. auto that is probably way out of my league, but that is definitely a non-sports grail that I have my eye on.
What's going on, sports card hobby family? Another day, another sports card video. We are going to tell a little story. Storytelling time today. I feel bad. I'm sorry to my friend Neo Cards and Comics. I will explain why in a second. Huge thanks to today's video sponsor, Pristine Auction. I recently got a signed James Hetfield Metallica guitar. It's on the way to me. They have all sorts of cool pop culture entertainment stuff, and they also have tons of sports cards and signed helmets and signed jerseys, all the goodness. But it's not just like long-term auctions. It's not like a 30-day auction, 14-day auction, weekly auction. They also have daily auctions. They have 10-minute auctions. They have live selling. All sorts of different good funness on Pristine Auction. Make sure to check out my link down below. Use Sports Card Dad code and get $10 off your first auction win at Pristine. All right, I was in a bind with this situation. The card that Neo and I both have been wanting. It's on kind of that short list of important Marvel cards. It is the 2008 Rittenhouse Robert Downey Jr. autograph. There's a couple different versions. There's him as Tony Stark, which is my preference, as well as Neo's preference for this card. Then there's also an option that's him in the Iron Man suit. So it's got his autograph and then it's got, the Iron Man suit thing. There's just something about that Tony Stark look, though, the card, to where it's him, it's his face, and it just sticks out. To me, that's just the better of the two cards. A little bit of background on the set. It's a 70 card base set. It's kind of very similar to a typical non-sports set. And then you've got sketch cards, you've got archive cards, different inserts, costume relics, and different things that come in these packs. There was 9,000 boxes created in the year 2008 when that first Iron Man movie came out. 9,000 numbered boxes. So a fairly limited release if we're comparing it against sports cards. And keep in mind, too, it's not as if there's 10 different Iron Man sets that came out. And so there is an element of limitedness to this particular set. The biggest chase card out of this set, you had a few different signers. You had Terrence Howard, you had Jon Favreau, you had Jeff Bridges, and then, of course, you had Robert Downey Jr. There's an estimated 100 to a couple hundred copies of this, so it is limited. It's not mega rare. It's not a 1 of 1. It's not out of 10 or anything like that. There are a few copies on eBay right now. One of them has a $50,000 OBO on it. Another one in the Iron Man suit, I think, is like $16,000. I believe over the last 90 days, there was a couple of sales in the $5,000, $6,000 range. So it's possible to get this as low as that price. But for the most part, it's kind of one of those things where they're limited enough where people can just kind of ask. They've got their asking price. I want to first, before I kind of dive in, again, talk about the thought process. I've been doing this lately, and I've been talking about FOMO when it comes to these types of cards. The Jordan Star 101, 84, the Art to Bart card, and this card in particular. The thing that they have in common is that the supply is low. It's known that there is a very low supply, and it's not contingent on this card getting a great grade for it to be important. It's different than, vintage cards where really the price point is in the quality of the card. If it's a 7, 8, 9, 10, it's in a whole different, different price brackets. They're not mega limited cards. They just happen to be iconic if we're talking about certain Mickey Mantle cards or Maze cards and that sort of thing. And so the FOMO is not, oh my gosh, there's a new player, there's a new product, I need to buy this Wemby card. It's not that kind of FOMO. It's FOMO of, uh-oh, this is a limited card, and if a whale or whales come into this market and target that particular card, they can scoop up this inventory. They can hold that inventory and name their own price. And we talked about it with the Star 101 Jordan. Is it out there? Yeah, it's out there, but they're drying up. There's less and less of them coming to auction because they're going into collections. There's people that are not flipping this card. Some people are still, buying and selling this card, but it's becoming less and less. At the National, I saw very, very few 101 cards, Jordan cards, and frankly, they were other star collectors that I knew of or had met there. Very few dealers had these cards. I only saw a handful. They always say kind of like, at the National, you can find anything. And that's really a good gauge, I think, is if you go to the National with that many tables, that many dealers, you go to trade night, you look at everybody's stuff. You got 100,000 people there and you're looking at everyone's inventory and you don't see these cards. That is music to my ears. That's the stuff I feel like, okay, hell, if I'm going to go to the National, if I'm going to go to these large card shows and go to Chantilly and I still don't see this inventory pop up very often, that's the type of stuff that I like. I really enjoy that sort of thing. So this Robert Downey Jr. card falls into that bucket. When we were at the National, and man, it killed me. Absolutely killed me. There was one copy that we saw, that I saw, and Neo saw as well at the show. One copy in the entire show, $8,000 or best offer for the RBJ auto. And we were talking about it, and you did have a couple recent comps that were kind of in the $5,500, $6,000 range, and I think Neo was in the $6,000 range for the card. And it sold there at the show for $7,500, which I was surprised at. But part of the reason is of course, if you go on the internet, you go look around for them. They don't just throw it on the 99-cent auction and shoot it off. It's huge bins. It's huge bins, OBO. And you have to fight somebody to try to get a copy of the card. And so you're probably saying, Dustin, well, what's the punchline? What's the rest of the story? Well, a copy of this card, while we were at the National, I knew about it because I was the high bidder on it at Hakes. And I'd been talking to Neo about this too. Like, you got to pay attention to Hakes. It's one of my channel partners. And Hakes, not as well known as a Golden or not as well known as an REA and some of these huge auction houses, Heritage, but they do monster sales for graded comic books. They've got sports items as well that do huge sales. Graded action figures do really well. They've got an excellent mix of kind of the pop culture and the sports stuff all thrown in. They are maybe a little bit more boutique in size, but have huge collectors that work with them. Next year, they've got probably the largest Star Wars action figures collectors opted to sell his entire inventory through Hakes. So I talk about in the channel, pay attention to these auction houses that are not Golden, that are not just Heritage, that are not just all the big ones that you always see, because stuff can slip through the cracks. And this card popped up on Hakes and I was like, oh my gosh. Well, first off, I didn't think I would get it. I thought, okay, this thing's going to get bid up. I'll be out on it. And if that happens, if it just kind of moves out of price range, I'm going to go to Neo and just say, hey, look, there's a copy of this card. I know you want the card. I'm out on this. But it just didn't happen like that. We got into the last day and the bidding was low in comparison to what the comps were. We got all the way down to the end. We were on off-centered last night and the close of the auction's at 9 p.m. We started off-centered at 9 p.m. Eastern. And the way Hakes works is it doesn't really allow for sniping. It's a bid hits it and there's a 20-minute clock that starts back. So it's kind of like, you make the bid, you wait 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes, if there's no more bids, it ends. If there's another bid within the 20 minutes, starts the clock over for another 20 minutes. And that's how it goes. But I kind of like it because it eliminates the last second snipe. It just basically offers this thing out. Hey, everyone's got a certain amount of time to get in on it. And so forth. and I won the card. And I couldn't believe that I won the card last night. I didn't get some amazing deal on it, but I just thought for sure, especially because this one in particular, and the reason why I really wanted to target this one is because it had the RBJ auto, but some of the ones he did had the 2008 inscription on it. And for a lot of people, this might not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal to me because, like with a lot of cards, you're looking for what's the differentiator on this already rare card. You know, when you look at, what are we seeing in the news now? PSA 10, Michael Jordan 86 Fleer, but it's autoed and it's a 10 auto. That's the differentiator. It's autographed by him. So you have kind of the in-person autograph. Oh, and there's an inscription that says 6-time NBA title champion. And then you also have the 10 auto grade. And of course, you know, people are going to look at that. It's the ultimate collector's item for Michael Jordan. Now, some will say, it's stupid. I don't want any of that. And for most of us, me included, I'm not in the running for a card like that. You know, that's a name your price type thing. And some huge collector will come in, big Jordan collector, or, you know, Jeff Bezos that just wants to say they own those cards or whoever, and they're going to come in and make a play, you know, on some of that stuff. And so the differentiator on this card is that he inscribed 2008. Now, so what? Who cares? It's just a random Marvel card. Why does 2008 matter? 2008 matters a lot, and not even just to Marvel card folks, but to comic book collectors. 2008 is really, that first Iron Man movie was what really kickstarted the MCU movie universe. And if you break down, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you break down over the last 15 years, the MCU, all the movies they've made and all the box office proceeds and the DVD sales when we were doing DVDs and the streaming sales, I feel pretty confident that the MCU has grossed more money than any other movie franchise in history, in the history of cinema. I could be wrong on it, but if I'm wrong, put in the comments, please put what that would be. And I'm including Star Wars in the mix too. Star Wars, of course, also a part of the Disney universe. Star Wars has a lot of movies and they have a lot of shows, so maybe they're rivaling. They're probably maybe rivaling that MCU, but the MCU's put out a lot of movies between Thor and Iron Man, and the Avengers stuff. Maybe it rivals it. Maybe Star Wars rivals it, but the point is that it's just a massive IP. You know, Star Wars and the MCU, massive, massive IPs. And this 2008 movie really kickstarted the graded comic book market for speculation. You know, there's a lot of spec money. You have a lot of channels too that are all about kind of covering the spec and price movements and do a great job with it. In the same way that people have been speculating on sports cards, whether that be new prospects or vintage or whatever you're into, 90s inserts. But this is a huge card when you look at kind of the history of the thing. When you look at the history of the MCU, you look at the history of Marvel cards, entertainment cards as a whole, this falls into kind of that short list of cards that carries a lot of importance. And that's why Neo and I want that card. So I was able to win it on Hakes last night. I'm still shocked that I was able to pick it up. I'm kind of sad and I'm sorry, Neo, because again, this is one that I want us both to have, but I could not pass up the opportunity at this card. You know, and again, if it had kind of got moved out of my price range, I would have said, Neo, this thing is just out of my range, but do you want to take a shot at it? I would have shared it with him. And frankly, I thought that he would have probably already checked Hakes because I've talked to him about Hakes and the stuff that pops up there. They've got some amazing stuff. And I don't think he saw it. I'm assuming he didn't see it. Maybe he saw it and then just let it go. I have no idea. I haven't actually talked to him yet. So the video is my apology video. And I'm sure that he's going to reach out to me and we'll kind of talk through this or whatever. But when we were at the National, I was the high bidder on this thing on Hakes, and he was looking at the one copy that we saw at the National and was like, man, I just don't know. That price point, it just seems high, and it was high. We had just seen, $5,000-$6,000 and it sold at $7,500, which just shows you that if the thing is rare or scarce, people will pay above comp just because there's not options for it. There's not many, and people sock those away. That's not a flip card. That is going into somebody's collection. So that's where we stand. I'm excited to get the card, but at the same time, like I said, I have a pit in my stomach because I know that he wants the card as well, and I want him to have a copy of the card. Fortunately, this is not a 1 of 1. This is not an out of 5 or an out of 10. And so it's possible to get a copy. It's not as if we're fighting over the Mona Lisa where there's only one. There is more of them out there. It's just a matter of the price point and the card that you want, kind of the copy that you want. For me, this was kind of that shot at it. And again, really what put it over the edge for me was the 2008 inscription that is fairly rare when you look at these cards. So it's already a rare card with the on-card auto, but then when you have the inscription, the 2008 written on there, I don't know how many copies have that. There's only 14 or so, a dozen or so that have been graded by PSA. It's just one of those, couldn't pass it up. So here we are, my long-winded video. I let down my very, very good hobby friend. In a way, I let him down, but I will be looking. If there's another one that pops up anywhere on Heritage or Hakes or anywhere else, I will be sending it to him and making sure that he is fully aware of the card. Friends, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.